Welcome to the quick hitter version of the Mike Wise Show from Pure Hoops Media. In this featured conversation from part one of our four-part series on the North Carolina basketball family, our panel of George Karl, George Lynch, and Matt Doherty joined my producer and co-host Bruce Bernstein to discuss how right from the start, Coach Dean Smith set an example of compassion and respect in his style of leadership.
So the first 5 seasons were tough for Coach Smith. He was always socially aware, and he put his money where his mouth was when it came to issues of racism and discrimination. He was very liberal in a very conservative state. George Karl, you played for Coach Smith. You were the kind of elder statesman in this group. Tell me what this meant to you as a player and as a person.
Well, Coach Smith was just an amazing human being. And I went to North Carolina because he wouldn't promise me a starting job like everybody else was promising me a starting job. And he was the one guy that said, hey, we think you're good. We think you can play, but we're not going to make any promises. But I think his liberalism towards racism was really popular for me. We were kind of the beginning of the integration of Black players into the South. I think Charlie Scott was the first one at Chapel Hill. That was about 3 years before I got there. And we had 2 or 3 guys on our team, African-American. But I had that many on my high school team. So it was a little different. But we all knew that Coach Smith wanted you to be a good human being. He wanted you to be a student. He wanted you to be community active, and he wanted you to be opinionated a little bit. He wanted you to kind of be a Michelangelo type of person. I apologize for my puppy barking. But I enjoyed so many conversations with Coach Smith about life as much as I enjoyed conversations about playing basketball.
George Lynch, what did it mean to you to come into UNC with Coach Smith?
It meant a lot. My father was a big Carolina fan. I remember watching Coach Doherty and Michael and James and that great team play that year. And just the conversations that my stepfather would have with me about Coach Smith was more about his civil duties and racial equality, things that he's done around North Carolina, like bringing in Scott, like being a close friend of John Thompson and Coach Big House Gaines. Those were the conversations that I used to hear my dad mentioning about Coach Smith. So for me to have an opportunity to play for him, I knew that he cared more about the student athlete and the person more than he cared about wins and losses on the basketball court.
Coach Doherty, you grew up in Long Island. Coach Karl was from Pittsburgh, and George was from Virginia. So, for a guy from the Northeast, what did Coach Smith? How did he impress you with his sort of stance on social things as well as basketball?
Well, as a kid, you're more focused on basketball. You're not aware as much, at least I wasn't, of the politics. Much like George, I had half my team my senior year in high school was African-American. So, you play basketball in the Northeast, you're playing with Black players, Puerto Rican players. It's the beautiful thing about sports. It's the melting pot. I found it interesting to me. I'm an executive coach now. I work with Vistage, and we talk a lot about culture, and that's a big topic with some of the companies I'm working with. And I can't help but refer back to Coach Smith on a regular basis. I mean, like not just one time a day, like 10 times a day. And the culture he instilled at an early time in his coaching, I wonder what he was thinking when he was working for Coach McGuire, and then he took over and immediately did it his way. And when George Karl was talking about the weighted vest and the 6 a.m.s, I mean, he was doing that in the 70s, he was doing it in the 80s, and he was doing it in the 90s. And the culture he instilled is world class. And companies, any organization is trying to capture that. But he did that in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s with young men that were 18 to 21 years old. So, you know, and it starts with the home visit, like with George Karl. I mean, I was a McDonald's All-American. I wasn't a great McDonald's All-American, but I was a highly recruited player. And like George Karl, everyone else is intimating that you're going to start and play a lot as a freshman. And I remember him sitting in my home, and he sat back and he goes, Matthew, you'll be lucky to play by the time you're a junior. And I remember leaning up and said to myself, I'll show you. And I think he did that for a couple of reasons. He wanted to set the culture straight. He's loyal to the upperclassmen. You got to earn it. But also, if you didn't respond to that, you weren't competitive enough to play for him. And I think that was a test where I said, damn, all right, I'll show you. And, you know, I was a sixth man as a freshman, started as a sophomore. And so, you know, to hear George Karl have that similar conversation with Coach Smith is really kind of funny, but not surprising.
If you'd like to hear more, please check out the full version of part 1 of our special 4-part Mike Wise show on the North Carolina basketball family from Pure Hoops Media. You can also check out some video segments on the Pure Hoops Media YouTube channel.